Letters from Patriarch Guang. From all delusions, karma, and demon states, amid all worldly paths I will be freed, as the lotus does not touch the water, as sun and moon do not stop in space. The vows of Samantabhadra. Letter 1. Turn afflictions into Bodhi. Since we last met, 6 years have gone by in a flash. During that time, not only have the snow and dew undergone change, the destiny of our nation has been profoundly transformed as well. The evanescence of life is truly something we all deeply mourn. I am pleased to learn from your letter that you have not neglected your Pure Land practice. However, you indicated that you are not at peace in body and mind. Could this be the result of financial difficulties or chronic illness? If you suffer financial hardship, I suggest you retreat a step. You should reflect thus. Although there are many in this world more fortunate than I, those who are less well off are hardly few in number. I should seek only to escape hunger and cold. Why dream of riches and honor? Moreover, if you are content and at peace with your circumstances and surroundings, you can even turn afflictions into Bodhi, enlightenment, not to mention grief into peace and joy. If you suffer chronic illness, you should reflect deeply that this body is the very source of suffering, develop a revulsion toward it, and strive to cultivate the Pure Land path, determined to achieve rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss. The Buddhas view suffering as their teacher. The Buddhas view suffering as their teacher, thus achieving ultimate enlightenment. Likewise, you should consider illness as medicine to escape birth and death. You should realize that human beings are bound by all kinds of karmic afflictions. Without the sufferings of poverty and illness, they will by nature pursue the world of sight and sound, fame and profit, finding it difficult to let go. Who would then willingly turn around to watch and ponder the state of perdition to come? The sage Mencius once said, "Those who will be entrusted with great tasks should first endure hardship both in body and mind, suffering hunger and destitution or failure in their undertakings. Only then will they be able to forge their character, develop patience and endurance, and attain outstanding abilities beyond the ken of the multitude." Therefore, you should realize that human character is usually forged in adversity. If adversity cannot be avoided, you should remain at peace and practice forbearance. Moreover, in speaking of great tasks, the sage Mencius was referring merely to mundane undertakings. Even so, enduring hardship is necessary for success. How much more so when lowly beings such as ourselves undertake the great dual task of achieving Buddhahood and rescuing sentient beings. If you are not tested to a certain extent by financial hardship and disease, your worldly delusions will know no bounds, and your Pure Land practice will be difficult to perfect. With your mind mirror clouded, you will revolve for many eons in the evil realms, not knowing when you will ever achieve liberation. The ancients have said, if it were not for a period of penetrating cold, the plum blossom could never develop its exquisite perfume. This is the meaning of what I said earlier. You should persevere in reciting the Buddha's name to eradicate past karma swiftly and avoid developing a mind of afflictions, resenting the heavens, blaming your fellow beings, considering the law of cause and effect as a fairy tale, and rejecting the Buddhas and their teachings as ineffective. You should know that from time immemorial we have all created immeasurable evil karma. As the Avatamsaka Sutra states, if evil karma had physical form, the empty space of the 10 directions could not contain it. Thus, how can haphazard, intermittent cultivation possibly annihilate all afflictions and obstructions? Sakyamuni Buddha and Amitabha Buddha, out of compassion for sentient beings who lack the strength to rid themselves of evil karma, specifically taught the method of relying on the Buddha's power to take their residual karma along to the Pure Land. Such compassionate action is all-encompassing. Even our obligations to the heavens or to our parents cannot be compared to it, not even on a scale of 10,000 to 1. Therefore, you should engage in earnest repentance, seeking the Buddha's assistance in eradicating past karma and achieving peace and tranquility of body and mind. If illness and suffering become unbearable, in addition to reciting the Buddha's name morning and night and dedicating the merits toward rebirth in the Pure Land, you should call wholeheartedly upon the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin of Avalokiteshvara. With her silent vow to rescue sentient beings, the Bodhisattva appears throughout the worlds of the 10 directions. If in times of crisis a person can keep reciting her name and revere her, she will respond according to the circumstances, enabling him to escape suffering and achieve happiness. Although Buddha recitation is simple, it is very deep and encompassing. The most important thing is to be utterly sincere and earnest, for only then will your thoughts merge with those of Amitabha Buddha and will you reap true benefits in this very life. If you are lazy and lax, lacking even the least bit of reverence and awe, you may sow the seeds of future liberation, but you must still bear the inconceivable evil karma stemming from disrespect and overfamiliarity. Even if, thanks to residual merits, you escape the evil realms, you will still find it difficult to join the ocean-wide Lotus Assembly. Nowadays, there are quite a number of scholars who study Buddhism. However, almost all of them simply read the words of the sutras and commentaries, seeking arguments and rationalizations to prove that they are versed in the Dharma. Those with the sincerity and devotion to cultivate according to the Dharma are few indeed. I've always said that to reap the real benefits of the Dharma, you should approach it with a truly reverent mind. 1/10 of reverence and devotion annihilates 1/10 of afflictions and evil karma, and increases merit and wisdom by 1/10. And this applies to 2/10, 3/10 of total reverence and devotion. Conversely, the more lax and disrespectful you are, the more obstructions and evil karma you develop, resulting in a corresponding decrease in merit and wisdom. How sad it is. When you meet with other laymen, you should counsel them along these lines. This would be a great Dharma gift. If you can penetrate the profound, subtle meaning of the Pure Land method, so much the better. However, even if you are not entirely clear about certain aspects of it, you should still believe firmly in the words of the Buddhas and the Patriarchs. You must not harbor doubts. To doubt is to turn your back on Buddha Amitabha, distancing yourself from him, making it difficult to be in communion with him and be received and guided at the time of death. The ancients have taught, only the Buddhas can truly fathom the ultimate meaning of Pure Land. Even those bodhisattvas who have achieved near equality with the Buddhas cannot grasp it completely. If even the highest level bodhisattvas cannot fully understand the Pure Land method, how can we expect to assess it with our own limited minds and capacities without falling into error? Intelligent persons these days may study the Dharma, but since they've not been in the company of fully enlightened sages, they almost always emphasize theory and nominal principle while rejecting phenomenal cultivation as well as the law of cause and effect. Little do they realize that without phenomenal cultivation and believing cause and effect, theory and phenomena cease to exist. There are also certain individuals of great talent and ability whose writings can astound the gods. However, their actions are never different from those of dullards in the marketplace. The root cause is their rejection of phenomenal cultivation and cause and effect. This grave error is repeated by other people. It is a case of betraying the Dharma with one's body actions. The depth of such offenses and transgressions is immeasurable. Witnessing this, those endowed with profound wisdom can only sigh in pity and compassion. An elder master once said, "Those who skillfully discourse on mind and self-nature surely can never reject cause and effect. Those who believe deeply in cause and effect naturally understand the mind, self-nature, and death. This is a natural development." The master's words are a truth that has withstood the test of time, a needle prickling the heads of those with delusive wisdom. Last autumn, during our esteemed brother's visit to Puto Mountain, I brought up these sincere, respectful points. However, I wonder whether he has taken them as the sincere, earnest words they were meant to be. Letter 2. Pure Mind in a Pure Land. How delighted I was to receive and read your letter. The sage Chupo, upon reaching his 50th birthday, looked back and realized the errors he was still committing at age 49. When nearing 70, Confucius expressed the wish to survive much longer in order to study the Book of Changes in depth and thus avoid major transgressions. The scholarship of these sages had reached the highest level of mind and thought. Today's scholars like to study chapter by chapter, with few showing concern for the issue of rectifying mind and thought. Thus they peruse the books all day long without understanding the true intent of the sages. Their words and actions differing from those of the sages as greatly as day from night or square from round. There is no possible correspondence. We are not even speaking here of the transgressions of mind and thought. If these transgressions were enumerated, the list would be endless. Buddhist sutras teach followers to practice repentance constantly in order to transcend delusion and achieve Buddhahood. Thus, even the Bodhisattva Maitreya, who has attained the level of equal enlightenment, still pays respect to the Buddhas of the 10 directions during the 6 periods of the day, so as to wipe out delusion and attain the Dharma body. If this is true for the Bodhisattva Maitreya, what can we say of common beings filled with heavy karmic afflictions? If you do not feel shame and remorse, your self-nature may be the same as the Buddhas, but it is hidden by afflictions and evil karma and cannot manifest itself. Just like a precious mirror which has been covered with dust for eons, not only does it not reflect light, even its reflecting nature is hidden. If you realize that the mirror already possesses the nature of brightness and strive ceaselessly to clean it, the light reflected will gradually increase until it reaches maximum radiance. The mirror can then become once more something of value in the world. You should realize that the potential for reflection is inherent in the mirror and is not the result of polishing. If it were not so, A brick would also shine brightly when polished, yet you should also realize that although the brightness is inherent in the mirror without polishing, the day would never come when it would gleam. The mind nature of sentient beings is similar. Although it is intrinsically identical to that of the Buddhas, it is clouded. Thus, if sentient beings do not mend their ways from evil to wholesome and turn their backs on worldly dust to merge with enlightenment, their inherently virtuous nature cannot appear. Such a mind consciousness, inherently possessing the Buddha nature in full, but busily creating evil karma and suffering, mired in birth and death for many eons, is no different from a dark house filled with treasures. You not only cannot make use of the treasures, you may in fact suffer further loss. Is this not lamentable? Pure Land is precisely the sublime method enabling the practitioner to turn his back on worldly dust to merge with enlightenment and return to the source, the mind. Laymen bound up in mundane affairs cannot easily find the time to attend retreats, practice meditation, and recite the sutras. This method is therefore very suitable for persons such as yourself. Each one can pay respect to the Buddhas and recite sutras or Buddha Amitabha's name according to individual circumstances and capacities, dedicating the merits thus accrued to rebirth in the Pure Land. In addition to your regular cultivation sessions, you should practice Buddha recitation when walking or standing, reclining or sitting, speaking or remaining silent, eating or dressing throughout the day, wherever you may be. When venerating the Buddhas in clean places, you may recite either aloud or silently. In dirty places such as washrooms or in circumstances that do not call for reverence, such as sleeping or bathing, you should just recite silently. To recite aloud when reclining is not only disrespectful, it is also fatiguing and may lead in time to illness. Silent recitation brings the same blessings and virtues as oral recitation, as long as it is distinct, earnest, and not subject to distractions. You already know that you must confess your transgressions and practice repentance. This is very much in accord with the Pure Land method, because when the mind is pure, the Buddha land is pure. However, once having repented, you should change your ways and practice wholesome deeds, lest your repentance consist of empty words, bringing no real benefit. This is also true if you wish to be free of external attachments, in order to concentrate on Buddha recitation and reach one-pointedness of mind. No extraordinary method is required. You should paste the single word death on your forehead and dangle it from your eyebrows, always keeping the following thoughts in mind. Since time immemorial, I've created untold, immeasurable evil karma. If such karma had formed, the empty space of the 10 directions could not contain it. Thanks to good conditions, I have been reborn in a human body and have, in addition, had the opportunity to hear the Dharma. However, given my evil karma, I must now recite the Buddha's name single-mindedly, seeking rebirth in the Pure Land. Otherwise, when my breath has ceased, I am bound to endure the sufferings of hell, hunger, ghosts, and animality. After recovering a human body, I would lack intelligence and be deluded, prone to create evil karma, unable to perform good deeds readily. In no time, I would sink deeper into the evil realms, with my residual bad karma from my previous lives still not repaid. I would commit new evil karma, constantly revolving along the 6 paths, throughout the eons as numerous as motes of dust, hopelessly lost in the immensity of suffering, not knowing how to reach liberation. If you always reflect on these points, your cultivation will be focused. Take the example of the 2 notorious men who, on the verge of death, witnessed the marks of hell appear, whereupon they recited the Buddha's name several times with utmost sincerity and devotion. Immediately they saw Amitabha Buddha coming to receive and guide them back to the Pure Land. This beneficial feature exists only in the Pure Land method, out of all the countless methods taught by Sakyamuni Buddha throughout his teaching career. Therefore, I always said that if the 9 realms of sentient beings do not practice this method, they cannot easily perfect the fruits of enlightenment, while if the Buddhas of the 10 directions abandon this method, they cannot benefit the masses far and wide. If you have utmost faith and cultivate earnestly, seeking escape from birth and death, then even though you still have not left the evil deluded world, you will not remain long in the Saha world either. While you may not have reached the Pure Land yet, you will soon be a new guest in the land of ultimate bliss. From now on, when you meet virtuous persons, do your utmost to emulate them. When you encounter an opportunity to practice good deeds, do not hesitate. How can you have the heart to procrastinate, lest the error of one moment lead to 10,000 lifetimes of regret? Surely those with high aspirations cannot tolerate being walking corpses, running aimlessly while alive, and simply decaying after death. Along with the grass and trees, redouble your efforts and exert yourself. Finally, while the key to rebirth in the Pure Land is single-mindedness. You as a layman still have your parents and your family. Although you should not unduly seek wealth and honor, you should still fulfill your family obligations, for to cultivate the Dharma is not to abandon everything. If you could let go of everything and still manage to provide for your parents and family, that would be all to the good. Otherwise, it would be contrary not only to human morality, but also to the Dharma. This is something you should also realize. As a filial son, you should counsel your parents concerning cultivation, so that they may practice Buddha recitation and seek rebirth in the Pure Land. If they can practice with faith, they will surely achieve rebirth. Once reborn, they will transcend the mundane and enter sagehood, escape birth and death, join the ocean-wide assembly, be close to Amitabha Buddha, and eventually achieve Buddhahood. Mundane filiality cannot be compared with such an achievement. If anyone were to advise others to cultivate the Pure Land method, the merits and virtues from such teaching would be entirely his, and in the future he will surely be reborn in the upper lotus grades. Letter 3. The true mark vehicle has no marks. It is very difficult indeed to respond to the important question raised in your letter. Why? It is because your aspirations are lofty while my knowledge is limited and meager. Loftiness and meagerness cannot meet. Therefore, my teaching will not be appropriate to your needs. However, in the true mark's single vehicle, the marks of loftiness and meagerness cannot be found. Within this vehicle, whether the marks are lofty or limited, depend on how they are conceived. Loftiness and meagerness always possess in full the nature of the Dharma realm. Moreover, the meagerness to which I refer encompasses all the Dharma of the 10 realms. The Pure Land Patriarch Shantao has said, if you wish to study meaning, understand the Dharma, you should study all Dharmas from the mundane level to the level of the Buddhas. However, if you want to engage in practice, you should choose a method compatible with the truth as well as your own capacities and level, and then concentrate on it earnestly. Only then can you reap benefits swiftly. Otherwise, even if you spend many eons, you will not be able to escape birth and death. This being so, there is no better method than to recite the Buddha's name with the mind of faith and vows, seeking rebirth in the Pure Land. If you wish to go deeper, you should carefully peruse the commentary of the essential points of the Amitabha Sutra and other Pure Land sutras and treatises. Buddhism is an open method within the 10 Dharma realms. Everyone should practice it, and anyone can practice it. Because they do not fully understand its true nature, some Confucian scholars blindly criticize Buddhism. However, the evil karma resulting from maligning the Dharma pales before the karma of vilifying it with one's own body. These days, some individuals, mouthing Mahayana teachings, consider themselves awakened to the way. They say, I am intrinsically a Buddha, why recite the Buddha's name? Afflictions are bodhi, what is the need to sever them? Lust, anger, and delusion are precepts, concentration and wisdom. Why sever lust, anger, and delusion? Their words are as lofty as the heavenly clouds, but their actions, upon close examination, are as low as the underworld. Such persons may be considered the enemies of Buddhism. Their evil karma is 10,000 times worse than that of persons who malign Buddhism through mere ignorance of the Dharma. While their efforts in studying the Dharma are not entirely wasted, these can only constitute the seeds of liberation in the future. Their transgressions, on the other hand, the vilification of the Dharma with their bodies, will surely result in retribution along the evil paths for countless eons to come. You should study Mahayana sutras and commentaries to ensure that your understanding is broad and complete. As far as cultivation is concerned, you should concentrate on faith, vows, and recitation of the Buddha's name. Letter 4. The Jeweled Net of Indra. From your letter, I can see that you are concentrating on reciting the Buddha's name, bowing to the Lotus Sutra, and trying to reduce your transgressions, but you have not yet achieved success. You are thinking of following a special method to review your progress day by day. All these actions demonstrate that your cultivation in recent days is truly aimed at self-improvement, unlike those who attempt to deceive others with external displays to achieve renown. This being so, nothing could be better. I truly rejoice in your actions. A mind of sincerity and respect is the key to the Pure Land tradition. With utter sincerity and respect, even though you are only an ordinary being whose virtues are not yet perfected, you will achieve unimaginable results. Conversely, without sincerity, bowing and reciting are no different from performing on stage, singing and prancing. Although you may be displaying the external signs of suffering, joy, compassion, and other emotions, they are all make-believe because they do not spring from the depth of your mind. Any blessings or virtues that may result are but diluted merits of the human and celestial realms, and these are precisely the basis of evil karma and the seeds of immense suffering in the future. You should explain this to all your friends and colleagues, and joining them to cultivate sincerely so as to spread the benefits widely. You should not think that the merits and virtues of reciting the name of or visualizing one Buddha are less encompassing than those received from reciting the name of or visualizing many Buddhas. You should realize that Amitabha Buddha is the Dharma realm treasure body. All the virtues of the Buddhas in the 10 directions of the Dharma realm are fully encompassed in Amitabha Buddha. This is like the jewel net of Indra, whose thousands and thousands of jewels are fully reflected in one jewel, and the image of one jewel is reflected in thousands and thousands of jewels, and each and every jewel encompasses every other in perfect, unimpeded fashion. To great sages who have cultivated for a long time, widely varying conditions and environments do not matter. In fact, the more diverse they are, the more focused the minds of these sages become. For beginners, on the other hand, if conditions and environments are varied, the mind consciousness grows confused and unfocused. Those with heavy obstructions and shallow wisdom may even at times be afflicted by demons. For this reason, Buddha Sakyamuni and the Patriarchs all enjoined us to recite the Buddha's name single-mindedly until achieving samadhi, at which time hundreds of thousands of Dharma methods and countless sublime meanings will manifest themselves in full. To exemplify this truth, the ancients have said, to bathe in the great ocean is to use the water of hundreds of rivers. Letter 5. The 10,000 Dharmas have no true nature. From your letter, I learned that in recent days you have engaged in earnest cultivation, examining yourself, mending your ways, and following the path of the sages with no desire for empty fame. I am very happy indeed. To follow in the footsteps of the Buddhas and sages and escape birth and death, you should first develop an attitude of shame and repentance, abandon evil ways, perform wholesome deeds, keep the precepts, and practice self-restraint. You should aim for the truth and practice to your utmost ability. Otherwise, this is deceit within deceit. Thus, understanding the Dharma is not difficult. Practice is the real difficulty. Many intelligent persons merely verbalize but fail to practice. They therefore waste an entire lifetime spoiling a visit to the jeweled mountain and returning empty-handed. What a great pity. Their deluded thoughts flare up unchecked because they are not earnest in maintaining correct thought. If they would only concentrate on one realm, deluded thoughts would be converted into correct wisdom. Therefore, as the saying goes, if the king rules wisely, rebels and bandits will become like his own sons. If he rules unwisely, even his closest friends will turn into enemies. As common beings, who among us is not afflicted by delusion and evil karma? However, if you take precautions in your daily life, afflictions will not flare up whenever you meet with adverse circumstances. Even if they do arise, you will be aware of and eradicate them. The conditions leading to afflictions are numerous. Most powerful among them are wealth, lust, and unusual adversities. If you realize that ill-gotten gains are more dangerous than venomous snakes, you will not desire them when you see them. On the other hand, to assist fellow beings is precisely to lay the foundation for your own future merit and virtue. Knowing this, whenever those in need seek your help, you should not be stingy and refuse, developing afflictions in the process. As for lustful thoughts, when you come across women as beautiful as flowers or precious gems, even women of pleasure and courtesans, you should view them as your own sisters, and with a compassionate mind seek to rescue them. In this way, you will not be moved by beautiful forms or swayed by lustful thoughts. Within the family, husbands and wives should respect one another as guests. When encountering adverse circumstances, you should develop thoughts of compassion, forgiving those who do not realize their mistakes, and avoiding disputes. You should think, in my previous lives, I have caused suffering and hurt sentient beings on many occasions. If I meet with adversity today, it is merely the repayment of previous debts. Thus thinking, you become naturally content and do not develop a mind of anger and vengefulness. However, these methods are for those of low capacities. In the case of sages who have cultivated for a long time, all afflictions become the illuminating mind store. The 10,000 Dharma realms have always been without self. The adverse or beneficial consequences of actions depend on the individual alone. Faith, vows, and practice form the cornerstone of Pure Land. If these three conditions are fulfilled, rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss will be achieved. You should pay particular attention to faith and vows, and wish wholeheartedly to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land, and not as a celestial being or Dharma master, however awakened, as these are still within the realm of birth and death. Only then will your faith and vows reach Amitabha Buddha, so that his compassionate vow may embrace you. In this connection, Elder Master Ui has said, achieving rebirth in the Pure Land depends entirely on faith and vows, while the level of rebirth depends on the depth of practice. This is a truth as solid as steel. Even if 1,000 Buddhas were to appear on earth, it would not change. Only by firmly believing in this truth will you have a destiny in the Western Pure Land. If you experience difficulty in reaching one pointedness of mind, you should focus your mind and recite with care. The main criteria of such concentration are utter sincerity and earnestness. It is very difficult to achieve one pointedness of mind without utter sincerity. However, sincerity is not enough. You should next listen attentively to the recitation. Whether or not recitation is performed aloud, it should originate from the mind. It then proceeds from the mouth and enters the ears, even if you recite silently. The marks of oral recitation still exist in the mind. With mind and mouth reciting clearly, the ears hearing clearly, and the mind thus concentrated, deluded thoughts will cease by themselves. You have now reached your 50s. If you wish to attain liberation in this very life, you should concentrate on the Pure Land method. The Diamond Sutra and the Lotus Sutra should be temporarily set aside until such time as you fully possess the Pure Land principles and achieve one pointedness of mind through Buddha recitation. If you spend time studying while you are trying to engage in cultivation, you may not have the time or energy. Thus, you will achieve neither and lose the benefits of both. Letter 6. Faith, Vows, and Practice. The true intention of Buddha Sakyamuni when he appeared in the world to preach the Dharma and rescue sentient beings was for all beings to escape birth and death and attain enlightenment immediately. However, because sentient beings were all differing capacities and thus could not entirely meet his transcendental expectations, the all-compassionate being resorted to one expedient teaching after another, all of them adapted to the individual capacities of sentient beings. To those of the highest capacities, the great sage taught the path of Buddha, showing them the self-nature directly so that they might attain Buddhahood in one lifetime, as in the case of Sudana in the Avatamsaka Sutra or the Dragon Princess in the Lotus Sutra. To those of more modest capacities, the Buddha taught the Bodhisattva, Pratyeka Buddha, and Arhat paths so that they might reach Buddhahood through step-by-step cultivation. To those of still lower capacities, the Buddha taught the 5 precepts and the 10 virtues. These methods, high or low, some leading to swift liberation, others to gradual liberation, are all different. However, they all require self-power and deep cultivation to escape from the cycle of birth and death and reach the self-nature. If even a trace delusion of views or delusion of thought remains, the roots of birth and death cannot be extirpated. This being the case, even if the cultivator's powers of concentration and wisdom are profound, he will continue to revolve in the cycle of birth and death. Only at the level of arhats are the roots of birth and death completely severed. However, transcending birth and death is merely the small fruit of the arhats. The cultivator must still aim for the path of great Bodhi, relying on his vow to be reborn in the worlds of the 10 directions. He may then cultivate the 6 paramitas and the 10,000 conducts in order to achieve Buddhahood and rescue sentient beings. In this matter, he will gradually achieve the 52 different stages of Bodhisattvahood up to the level of wonderful enlightenment, before finally reaching Buddhahood. Although Buddha Sakyamuni expanded countless methods throughout his teaching career, they are all based upon the various stages of Bodhisattvahood mentioned above. Thus, the Zen tradition points directly to the self-mind, seeing one's nature and achieving Buddhahood. This is a perfect direct shortcut. However, we are speaking here from the viewpoint of the inherent Dharma body, that is, principle or nomina, bypassing phenomenal cultivation and attaining grounded in the law of cause and effect. If we were to consider the different levels of cultivation and achievement, there would be no difference between Zen and the Sutra studies method. However, in the midst of this Dharma ending age, there are very few good spiritual advisors, while the capacities of sentient beings are limited. It is difficult enough to find someone who is awakened to the way, not to mention one who has truly attained enlightenment. Thus, knowing that sentient beings would find it extremely difficult to achieve liberation by relying on self-power alone, Sakyamuni Buddha taught, in addition to other methods, this special approach of Pure Land. With this method, as long as their faith and vows are true and earnest, even those who have committed the 5 grave offenses or the 10 evil acts may, on the verge of death, when the marks of hell appear, Follow the advice of a good spiritual advisor and recite the Buddha's name 1 to 10 times. Then, thanks to the compassionate power of Amitabha Buddha, even they will be received and guided to the Pure Land, not to mention those who practice wholesome deeds and do not commit transgressions. The more diligently the cultivator engages in wholesome conduct and the deeper his power of concentration, the higher his level of rebirth will be. He will see Amitabha Buddha soon after rebirth and be able to hear the wonderful Dharma. Therefore, even those who have awakened to the way, severed delusion, and attain the truth should dedicate all merits toward rebirth in the Pure Land, seeking perfect attainment of the Dharma body and swift attainment of Buddhahood. Other methods depend on the capacities of the practitioner. If they lead only to limited attainment, such as arhatship, those of high capacities need not practice them. If they lead to great attainment, those of limited capacities cannot cultivate them. Only the Pure Land method embraces practitioners of all three capacities, high, moderate, and low. Supremely lofty beings, such as the Bodhisattvas of Avalokiteshvara, Mahastamaprapta, Manjushri, and Samantabhadra, cannot transcend it, while those of low capacities who have committed the 5 grave offenses or the 10 evil deeds and have sown the seeds of the never-ending hell can still participate in it. If Sakyamuni Buddha had not taught this method, the majority of sentient beings in the Dharmanic age could not hope to escape the cycle of birth and death. Despite its loftiness, the Pure Land Dharma door is a very easy method of cultivation. For this reason, not only do ordinary beings find it difficult to believe, but cultivators of the 2 vehicles, Theravada followers, also harbor doubts. This applies even to bodhisattvas at the expedient level. Only those who have sown the wholesome seeds of Pure Land in previous lives, as well as the higher level bodhisattvas, can truly have firm and deep faith in it. A newborn prince who has not yet proven his talents and virtues is still above the ministers in nobility and honor. Thanks to the powers of royal lineage. Likewise, those who practice Buddha recitation with full faith and vows, though they may be ordinary beings belonging to a lineage superior to that of the disciples of the 2 vehicles, this is because they have learned to cast their earthly minds into the sea of enlightenment, silently in tune with the wonderful way. Thanks to Amitabha Buddha's power, they will swiftly attain the level of non-retrogression. In discussing the Pure Land method, you should make a general comparison of the ease and difficulty of other power versus self-power, as employed in this and other methods, respectively. Otherwise, even if you do not doubt the Dharma, you will doubt yourself, and even a trace of doubt becomes an obstacle. In such a case, even if you engage in cultivation, you will not reap the full benefits, not to mention what will happen if you do not cultivate. For this reason, faith is the first criterion. You should firmly believe that the Saha world is a place of suffering, the Western Pure Land realm of bliss, as is said in the smaller Amitabha Sutra. Shariputra, why is that land called utmost happiness? The beings of that land experience no suffering, they only know every kind of joy. Therefore it is called utmost happiness. You should be wary and not attempt to reason with the mind of an ordinary being, lest you mistakenly think that all the wonderful, extraordinary events beyond common understanding that occur in the Western Pure Land are myths representing the mind Dharma, rather than a true environment. With this misunderstanding, you lose the benefit of rebirth in the Pure Land. This is a major error, so be careful. Once you realize that the Saha world is a place of suffering, while the Pure Land is a place of joy, you should develop true earnest vows, resolving to leave the Saha world and return to the land of ultimate bliss. Such vows are no different from those of a person who has fallen into an excrement pit and seeks to escape swiftly, or of a prisoner who yearns for his native village. Such hopes and desires should be utterly sincere, because your own strength cannot free you from your predicament. Sentient beings in the Saha world, facing circumstances that accord or fail to accord with their wishes, often develop the mind of greed, anger, and delusion, create the karma of killing, stealing, and lust, and tarnish their bright, spotless self-nature. This is a filthy, bottomless pit. Having created evil karma, they must endure suffering through many lifetimes along the evil path. This is a drawn-out imprisonment. Untold eons ago, Amitabha Buddha made 48 vows to rescue sentient beings. One of the vows, the 18th, stated, "If after my obtaining Buddhahood, all beings in the 10 quarters should desire in sincerity and trustfulness to be born in my country, and if they should not be born by only thinking of me 10 times, may I not attain the highest enlightenment." Jaya Okazaki, Pure Land Buddhist Painting, page 15. Although Amitabha Buddha, the compassionate one, made such a vow, if sentient beings do not seek his help, there is little he can do. However, anyone who recites his name with utter sincerity, vowing to leave the Saha world behind, will be welcomed and escorted to the Pure Land. Amitabha Buddha has great power. He can rescue sentient beings from the excrement pit and the prison of the defiled world, guide them to the land of ultimate bliss, and help them enter the realms of the Buddhas to assume the prerogatives and functions of the Tathagatas, Buddhas. Rebirth in the Western land thus requires, first of all, deep faith and fervent vows. Without these conditions, even if you were to cultivate, you could not obtain a response from Amitabha Buddha. You would merely reap the blessings of the human and celestial realms, and sow the seeds of liberation in the future. Anyone who fulfills the conditions of faith and vows is assured of rebirth in the Pure Land. When Elder Master Yuan Ming stated that out of 10,000 who cultivate Pure Land, 10,000 will achieve rebirth, he was referring to those with full faith and vows. Once you have deep faith and earnest vows, you should practice Buddha recitation as your principal method, guided by your faith and vows. These three components, faith, vows, practice, are precisely the main tenets of Pure Land. Lack any one of these conditions will prevent you from achieving rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss. The form of Buddha recitation practice depends on the circumstances of each individual. There is no single set way. If the cultivator is very busy, having no free time, he should set aside a specific period in the early morning. After washing up, he should bow 3 times to the Buddha in front of his altar, if he has one. Then, standing erect, he should join his palms and single-mindedly recite the words, Namo Amitabha Buddha, as many times as he can in one stretch, each stretch counting as one recitation. He should recite thus for 10 stretches and then utter the following stanzas. I vow that, along with other Pure Land cultivators, I'll be reborn in the land of ultimate bliss, see Amitabha Buddha, escape birth and death, and rescue all as the Buddha does. After reciting the stanza, he should bow 3 times before retiring. If he does not have an altar, he can face west with palms joined, reciting according to the above method. This is the 10 recitations method with Elder Master Zhu Wen, established for rulers and officials who are too busy with affairs of state to engage in cultivation. By reciting one stretch, it is because sentient beings have scattered, unsettled minds, and are thus unable to practice assiduously. This recitation method relies on the breath to concentrate the mind. However, the number of utterances is dependent on the length of the breath span. There should be no effort or constraint, as this would lead to fatigue. Since recitation with a scattered mind cannot easily lead to rebirth in the Pure Land, this method is useful for focusing the mind. While the recitations are few in number, the virtues accrued are profound and rebirth is assured. Moreover, the practitioner should maintain a virtuous and forgiving mind in all circumstances, guard against mistakes in each of his thoughts, be willing to recognize mistakes, correct his transgressions, and gladly perform good actions. Only then will he be in accord with Buddha Amitabha. Failure to do so indicates that his mind is still obstructed, and thus not consonant with the mind of the Buddha. This makes it difficult for the two to interact. Furthermore, when bowing, reciting Mahayana sutras, or accomplishing various wholesome deeds, he should dedicate all the resulting merits to rebirth in the Pure Land. He should not dedicate only the merits of Buddha recitation itself, while transferring incidental merits toward worldly blessings. In the latter case, he would not be single-minded, making rebirth in the Pure Land very difficult to achieve. The Pure Land method is extolled in numerous Mahayana sutras. The Theravada sutras, on the other hand, do not mention it at all. Those who are not versed in the Dharma and reject Buddha recitation as a self-benefit method are speaking thoughtlessly. Do not listen to them. Letter 7. The Brahmanet Sutra and the Precepts. I have made my home on Puto Mountain for some 20 years, and during the entire time I have not engaged in personal contact with lay people. Recently, when Master Fuyan visited our mountain, he approached me in the meditation hut on several occasions within the space of 10 days to talk about your fidelity and moral integrity, exhibiting deep concern each time. On these occasions, I advanced the opinion that although your integrity is praiseworthy, you do not know how to cultivate properly. I also said that, time permitting, I would write a letter of advice to you, explaining the main lines of the Pure Land method so that you could, according to your strength and conditions, step onto the Pure Land path. Upon hearing this, Master Yu Fan expressed his approval and wholeheartedly requested me to do so. This is the genesis of my letter to you today. The Dharma already exists in full in the minds of all sentient beings. Both clergy and lay persons can uphold it. However, women's lives entail many restrictions. If you leave your native village to travel far, you may well be subjected to oppression and assault. Therefore, you'd better stay home. Keep the precepts and recite the Buddha's name, determined to seek rebirth in the Western Pure Land. There is no need to leave your native place to become a nun. Extensive travel to various temples and other holy places to seek out great masters with whom to study the sutras in depth should be left to men. For women to follow this course is not advisable. You should strive to practice the Pure Land method, reciting the Buddha's name assiduously. If you succeed in gathering your 6 faculties together and engage in pure recitation without interruption, you can attain samadhi as a matter of course in this very life. Why then worry about not reaching the higher lotus grades at the time of death? Even if you do not reach samadhi, you will still achieve rebirth in a lower status grade, in a lower lotus grade. Be part of the ocean-wide assembly close to Amitabha Buddha. You will gradually return to the true self-nature and naturally understand the various teachings. Then, just like an image in a mirror, you will appear in the Saha world without leaving the Pure Land. To rescue sending means throughout countless expedients, helping them to all to reach the Pure Land and attain the tolerance of no birth. And attain the tolerance of non-birth, insight into the non-origination of all things. This will not be turning your back on your present firm determination to cultivate. In fact, you will deserve to be called a green lotus blossom born amid fire, a true woman of character. The basis of Pure Land is the determination to be reborn in the land of ultimate bliss. Therefore, the motto of the school is faith, vows, and practice. Faith means believing that the Saha world is filled with the 8 sufferings, while the Pure Land is a realm of boundless joy. Once you have firm faith, you should vow to leave the Saha world like a prisoner desperate to leave his jail, and resolve to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land, like a traveler longing for his native place. As someone who has not achieved rebirth in the Pure Land, even if you were presented with the jeweled throne of the God King Brahma, you should consider it as a cause and condition of perdition, without a single thought of longing. Likewise, wishes such as rebirth as a male, entering the clergy early in life, attaining great intelligence, great spiritual powers, shall be considered tortuous paths of cultivation which can only bring you back to your starting point. Abandon all these thoughts and seek only to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land at the time of death. Once reborn, you will naturally escape the cycle of birth and death, transcend the human world, enter the realm of the sages, reach the stage of non-retrogression, and attain the stage of non-birth. At that time, when you look back, you will discover that the royal throne and the human and celestial realms, even rebirth as a high-ranking monk, are but tiresome occurrences that last for many eons with no liberation in sight. You will then realize that compared to your present lotus grade, those aspirations are no different from a flickering flame versus a rainbow, or an anthill versus a mountain. Thus, the Pure Land practitioner certainly should not seek the blessings and merits of the celestial and human realms, not even rebirth as a high-ranking monk. Just a trace of such thinking constitutes a lack of deep faith and earnest vows. Such thoughts place a barrier between you and the vows of Amitabha Buddha, preventing you from achieving rebirth in the Pure Land. This is a great pity, a great waste indeed. How could you have the heart to exchange the unimaginably sublime Pure Land for mundane happiness, so that when all the blessings have been exhausted, you'd continue to revolve in the cycle of birth and death, dragged by the current of karmic delusion, subject to untold suffering? If poison is mixed with butter, the delicious butter becomes lethal. Practicing the Pure Land without the right frame of mind brings similar harm. You must extirpate such wrong thoughts in order to enjoy fully the benefits of the Pure Land method. Once having developed deep faith and earnest vows, you should hold fast to the words Amitabha Buddha, regardless of the occasion, whether walking or standing, sitting or reclining, speaking or remaining silent, moving about, meditating, dressing, eating, even when in the privy. You should keep the words Amitabha Buddha firmly in your mind. You should exert yourself until the recitation are constantly before you. The whole Buddha is mind. Mind and Buddha are one. Reciting to the ultimate point where all mundane feelings are forgotten. At that time, the mind being empty, the Buddha appears. During this life, you can attain the Buddha remembrance samadhi. At the time of death, achieve rebirth in the upper lotus grades. Cultivation in this way may be considered as exercising your abilities to the utmost. In daily life, the merits accrued from the smallest wholesome deeds, as well as the virtues garnered from Buddha recitation and sutra recital, should all be dedicated to rebirth in the Pure Land. All actions then become practices which facilitate rebirth, not unlike deriving soil from dust and sand, or the oceans from the rivers and streams. The depth and breadth of such Buddha recitation is immense. You should furthermore develop the Bodhi mind, vow to rescue sentient beings, and dedicate the merit and virtues of cultivation to repayment of the 4 great debts in the triple realm, as well as to sentient beings in the Dharma realm. This creates a far-reaching Dharma affinity with all sentient beings, like oil poured on fire or rain falling on new seedlings, so that you will achieve early success in your Mahayana practice. If you miss this point, your Pure Land practice will become the grasping self-benefit approach common to humans in lower-level stages, arhats and pratyeka Buddhas. While your method of cultivation may be sublime, the benefits received will be extremely low-level and limited. When reciting the Buddha's name, you should gather your thoughts together. Reciting originates in the mind and is channeled through the mouth. Each phrase, each word clearly enunciated. You should also listen clearly, impressing the words in your mind. If the faculty of hearing is under control, the other faculties are also held in check and cannot chase after external dust. As a result, one-pointedness of mind is swiftly achieved. Thus, the Bodhisattva Mahasammaprabhupada said in the Shravangama Sutra, to gather the six senses together, pure recitation following upon pure recitation without interruption, thus attaining samadhi, this is uppermost. Likewise, the Bodhisattva Manjushri taught, hearing within hearing one's nature becomes the supreme path. You certainly should not think that oral recitation holding the name is shallow, and follow other methods such as visualization, contemplation of an image, or real mark Buddha recitation. Of the 4 Buddha recitation methods, only oral recitation is well adapted to the capacities of sentient beings. If one-pointedness of mind is maintained, the sublime truth of real mark will be fully revealed, and the extraordinary realm of the Western Pure Land will appear clearly. Therefore, you can achieve real mark through oral recitation. You can see the Western Pure Land without engaging in visualization. This method of recitation is precisely the wonderful door to the way, the most expedient path to Buddhahood. People today generally do not understand the teachings underlying the visualization or real mark methods. If they follow these methods, they may at times be subject to demons. Thus, the best approach is to select the easiest practice, which still leads to the wonderful fruit of enlightenment. You should not attempt a shortcut and end up losing the way, seeking liberation, but winding up in perdition. That would be regrettable indeed. After summarizing several Pure Land commentaries to reinforce these points, the master continued, once you have read these books, you will have a complete understanding of the tenets of Pure Land. It does not matter that you have not read the sutras widely. Without fully understanding Pure Land teachings, even if you deeply understand the entire Buddhist canon and have awakened completely to self-mind, it will take you untold eons to fulfill your original vows to escape the cycle of birth and death. Buddha recitation is the panacea for all diseases. To miss knowing about such a wonderful remedy would be a cause for great suffering and regret. To be aware of but not practice it, or to practice it but not in earnest, is to have even greater cause for suffering and regret. As far as receiving the lay precepts is concerned, you can visit this temple if you have the means and the capacity to do so. Otherwise, why get so fixated on travel? All you need is to have an earnest, sincere mind, repent your transgressions before your home altar for 7 consecutive days, and express the wish to receive the precepts by yourself. On the 7th day, you should kneel before a Buddha image and say aloud, your disciple by the name of vows to receive the 5 precepts and fulfill the obligations of a laywoman. I vow that for the rest of my life, I will not take the lives of sentient beings, steal, indulge in sexual misconduct, lie, or take intoxicants. Repeating these vows 3 times constitutes receiving the precepts. The most important thing is to do so in an utterly sincere frame of mind, in which case the benefits and virtues of receiving the precepts are the same whether you do so by yourself or through a monk or nun. You should not think that receiving the precepts in such a manner is not in accord with the Dharma. You should know that the method described above follows the wise teaching of Sakyamuni, Buddha in the Brahmana Sutra. On Puto Mountain, there are no precept transmission ceremonies in the autumn, but only during a 7-week period following the Lunar New Year. However, I sincerely wish that you would stay put at home practicing Buddha recitation rather than struggling through fog and snow to reach Puto Mountain. If you stick to your fixed ideas without changing your mind, you will miss distinguishing the good from the bad, damaging your own pure cultivation, and displaying ingratitude toward the sincere, earnest words of this old monk. I want you to attain the goal of your cultivation within this lifetime, and certainly do not have the least intention of hindering your development in the Dharma. If you think it over carefully, you will see so yourself. As for your intention to commit suicide, because you cannot become a nun, such determination, however powerful and intense, is deluded and insane. In the midst of this Dharma and age, how many monks and nuns are worthy of being teachers? As a woman, especially, may be subjected to overbearing masters, insulted or drawn into intrigues. You only think that to leave home and become a nun is liberation, but you do not yet know that the many difficulties and obstacles which monks and nuns face. Do not think furthermore that to commit suicide is to free yourself of the cares and worries of this life. Once dead, your soul will be led away by the power of karma to be reborn in another body. Not to mention that, given your angry state of mind, you may well be reborn in the animal realm. Under such circumstances, it will be difficult even to regain a female body. Should you succeed in being reborn as a woman or a man, or even as a ruler in the human or celestial realms, there is still no assurance that you will encounter the Dharma and engage in cultivation. Even if you are so fortunate, who knows if you will be in the good position to discover the Pure Land method, a method that enables each and every one to escape birth and death in one lifetime. Moreover, even if you were fortunate enough to encounter the Pure Land method, then it is not much better to go on living and cultivating patiently right now, so that when this retribution body comes to an end, you will immediately achieve rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss. I've exhausted my words in advising and counseling you. Let me ask you, did anyone ever go over these questions with yourself in mind? To the extent that I have, if you do not follow the words of this old monk, you have shown ingratitude toward his teaching. Moreover, I fear your suffering in the future will be infinitely greater than it is now. Letter 8. Let us part ways. Original letter to Elder Master Guang. It took some 10 years of Buddha recitation for me to know something of its wonderful meaning. I venture to think that the Pure Land method, as taught in such writings as your Pure Land letters, is in general inexpedient for ordinary people of limited capacities. However, if people like ourselves who are fully literate and accustomed to exercising our minds follow this method, we certainly cannot be reborn in the Pure Land. According to my limited understanding, those who recite the Buddha's name seeking rebirth in the Pure Land should first understand who is reciting the Buddha's name. Because only when we discover the real master will Buddha recitation have meaning and rebirth be assured. This does not apply only to those to Buddha recitation. Anyone who recites sutras or recites mantras should also follow this path. Nowadays, those who teach Buddha recitation say that we should recite in a mature way with an utterly focused as if dead mind in order to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land. Do they not realize that if we are not clear as to who is reciting the Buddha's name, we cannot recite in a mature way with an as if dead mind? Even if we were to recite 100,000 times each day, such recitation would have no relation to the issue of birth and death. Some people even add that ancient masters generally concentrate on oral recitation rather than meditation or on the Buddha's name. I, on the contrary, would say the ancients practiced oral recitation only after they had achieved success in meditation. Those of limited capacities should not try to emulate them. It is really too bad that these days 9 out of 10 practitioners fail to understand this point. I always do my utmost to caution people about this, but some laymen even think that I have wrong ideas. Understanding the subtle meaning of the Dharma has sunk to such depths that we can only lament and deplore the situation. I'm bearing my heart to you today, and would beg you, Master, to certify my understanding and expound on this truth. This is for the benefit of everyone, and certainly not this writer alone. Answer. I cannot exhaust my praise nor commend you and your friends enough. If through failure to examine his level you administer the wrong remedy, you'll be no different from an incompetent physician who kills his patients with the wrong medicine. You should know that although the two Dharma methods, Pure Land and Zen, have the same root and the same source, their methods of cultivation are different. The main tenet of Zen is to see one's original nature, while the teachings of Pure Land are faith, vows, and reciting the Buddha's name to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land. If most people today were of high capacities, your words would indeed be extremely beneficial. However, on close examination, those of high capacities are few and far between, while those of moderate and low capacities form the vast majority. This being the case, failing to teach people to develop faith and vows, seeking rebirth in the Pure Land, while advising them to meditate on the Buddha's name as a koan, is utterly detrimental. This is because while awakened to the way through meditation on the Buddha's name would be a fortunate development, an utterly sincere vow for rebirth in the Pure Land. would still be unnecessary. Meanwhile, if meditation is unsuccessful, Meanwhile, if meditation is unsuccessful, and the mind constantly grasps at the koan who is reciting the Buddha's name, correspondence between the practitioner and the Buddha will be extremely difficult to realize, and the benefit of the welcoming and escorting vow will be lost. Those who really know who is reciting the Buddha's name are precisely those who have already awakened and clearly seen their true nature. Nowadays, how many practitioners can meditate to the point of awakening to the way, great awakening? However, let us not speak about others. Even you and your friends have not reached that level. How do I know? It is because if you had, you would never have dared to make such statements as these in your letter. The Pure Land method is an expedient for ordinary people of limited capacities. Not knowing who is reciting the Buddha's name is not reciting in a mature way with an as-if dead mind. Reciting 100,000 times a day has no relationship to the issue of birth and death. The ancients practiced oral recitation only after they had achieved success in meditation. Enough for the thoughts behind your letter. You have very good intentions, wishing everyone to see his original nature so as to achieve rebirth in the upper lotus grades. The Meditation Sutra teaches, recite the Mahayana Sutras, understand the supreme meaning, develop the Bodhi mind, counsel and exhort others to cultivate. This must certainly be your intention. Nevertheless, the Dharma should be adapted to the level of the listener. If through failure to examine his level, you administer the wrong remedy, you will be no different from an incompetent physician who kills his patients with the wrong medicine. You should know that although the two Dharma methods, Pure Land and Zen, have the same root and the same source, their methods of cultivation are different. The main tenet of Zen is to see one's original nature. All the teachings of Pure Land are faith, vows, and reciting the Buddha's name to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land. If most people today were of high capacities, your words would indeed be extremely beneficial. However, on close examination, those of high capacities are few and far between, while those of moderate and low capacities form the vast majority. This being the case, failing to teach people to develop faith and vows, seeking rebirth in the Pure Land while advising them to meditate on the Buddha's name as a koan is utterly detrimental. This is because while awakening to the way through meditation on the Buddha's name would be a fortunate development, an utterly sincere vow for rebirth in the Pure Land would still be necessary. Meanwhile, if meditation is unsuccessful and the mind constantly grasps at the koan who is reciting the Buddha's name, correspondence between the practitioner and the Buddha will be extremely difficult to realize, and the benefit of the welcoming and escorting vow will be lost. Those who really know who is reciting the Buddha's name are precisely those who have already awakened and clearly seen their true nature. Nowadays, how many practitioners can meditate to the point of awakening to the way, great awakening? However, let us not speak about others. Even you and your friends have not reached that level. How do I know? It is because if you had, you would never have dared to make such statements as these in your letter. The Pure Land method, is an expedient for ordinary people of limited capacities. Not knowing who is reciting the Buddha's name is not reciting in a mature way, with an as-if dead mind. Reciting 100,000 times a day has no relationship to the issue of birth and death. The ancients practiced oral recitation only after they had achieved success in meditation. Those of limited capacities should not try to emulate them. In truth, while your intention is to benefit yourself and others equally, through your words you've not only erred yourself, you've led others astray as well. From now on, please desist from such talk, otherwise you will slam the door on and bury the all-embracing method of the Buddhas to rescue sentient beings everywhere, preventing this method from being known far and wide. Such a transgression is tantamount to vilifying the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You should be careful indeed. Since your understanding of the Dharma is not skillfully adapted to people's capacities, in that you attempt to bring a high-level Dharma to everyone, it is, in the end, a one-sided, biased attachment and a great mistake. Not realizing this, you think that you have correctly understood the subtle meaning of the Dharma and therefore seek my certification. This monk, although not erudite, would not dare to commend, acquiesce in, and support such a request, which would cause all of us to fall into the error of vilifying the three treasures. If you do not believe the words of this old monk, let us part ways once and for all. I would not dare try forcing others to abandon their own ideas and understanding to follow my lowly thoughts. It is only because of your letter that I reluctantly offered some frank, though limited views. Letter 9. Amitabha Buddha, the boundless self-nature of light and life. Since we parted mid-spring, time has flown by, and it is now summer. The light of springtime has passed swiftly, a frightening reminder indeed. Each time I think of the two of you, I recall that despite your true and sincere faith, you lack sufficient understanding of the Dharma to the point where you have abandoned the lofty ground to follow lowly dark paths. Not only have you lost correct views and become yourself a topic of ridicule, even this old monk is embarrassed by the bad reputation he has acquired for being an acquaintance of yours. In your letter, you mentioned the possibility of having me correct some of your future writings. However, with my weak eyes and bad health, I do not normally take to writing. Even if my advice is needed, whatever I put down is nothing but a heap of empty words. What is there which is worth reading? Still, lest I seem ungrateful for your trust, I am tentatively setting forth some leftover soup and stale rice. If you do not object to the smell, perhaps they can temporarily assuage your hunger until the time when you can taste the exquisite food of the self-nature. The verse 4 options is very profound and worthy of attention. You should ponder it carefully. By all means, do not take it lightly on the basis of the shallow explanations of a few persons, or you will fail to appreciate the great compassionate mind of Master Yuan Ming, who has exhausted words and counsel. The treatise, The Benefits of Reciting the Sutras Depend on One's Mind, was written because people today recite the sutras without the least bit of reverence. The true benefit of the Buddha Dharma is found in a reverent mind. Such a state of mind can even lead to swift supreme enlightenment, not to mention the lower levels of sagehood, arhats, and pratyeka Buddhas. The Pure Land Patriarch Shantao, traditionally considered a transformation body of Amitabha Buddha, was endowed with great spiritual powers and wisdom. However, in teaching Pure Land, he did not advocate the mystical and sublime, but merely emphasized everyday ordinary realities. His teachings on exclusive practice and sundry practices are extremely useful. Exclusive practice consists of the body bowing exclusively to Amitabha Buddha, the mouth exclusively repeating the Buddha's name, and the mind focusing exclusively on the Buddha's name. Out of 10,000 cultivators who practice in such a manner, 10,000 are assured of rebirth in the Pure Land. Sundry practices entail engaging in various methods of cultivation while dedicating the merits accrued toward a rebirth in the Western Land. Since the practitioner's mind is not focused or single-minded, it is difficult to accumulate merits. Thus, only 3 or 4 out of 100 or thousands can hope to achieve rebirth in the Pure Land. These are true golden words of advice, immutable throughout the ages. Both of you should follow them for your own benefit and in counseling everyone else. Reciting mantras, too, should be considered an ancillary practice rather than a principal method along with Buddha recitation. The merits derived from mantra recitation are indeed inconceivable. However, ordinary people who achieve rebirth in the Pure Land owe it entirely to utterly sincere faith and vows, as these correspond to the lofty vows of Amitabha Buddha. If you are not clear about this truth, thinking that all dharmas are unfathomable, and therefore it does not matter which method you cultivate, you will end up practicing neither Zen nor Pure Land. This will lead to eons of wandering in the wasteland of birth and death. Whom, then, could you rely on for help? You should realize that as a common being full of karmic obstructions, you will certainly find it difficult to escape birth and death in this very life, unless you rely on the vows of Amitabha Buddha. Only then will you discover that the Pure Land method surpasses other Dharma methods in power and utility. Reciting mantras and sutras for the purpose of sowing merits and wisdom and illuminating evil karma and transgressions is all to the good. However, to be deluded and seek spiritual powers is to abandon the roots for the branches on error and judgment. If furthermore your mind is grasping, your understanding of the Dharma nebulous, your precept keeping lax, your bodhi mind undeveloped, and your discriminatory win-lose mind raging unchecked, you will be exposed one day to demons that may drive you insane. If you want to obtain spiritual powers, you should first attain enlightenment and Buddhahood. Once Buddhahood is attained, you will naturally have full spiritual powers. If you do not strive for the way, but merely seek spiritual powers, let us not even speak about whether anything can be gained. If you should obtain anything, it would become an impediment to the way. For this reason, the Buddhas and Patriarchs have strictly prohibited this erroneous form of cultivation. Because such ideas are common, I've taken the opportunity to mention them in passing. Both of you still have your parents at home. Therefore, You should keep explaining the Pure Land method and the accounts of rebirth to them, so that they may develop the mind of joy, believe in the accounts, and follow the examples therein. If you do not repay your filial debts in this way, even if you are filial in the mundane sense, what good will it do your parents at the end of their lives? You should wake up and hasten to ensure that, at death, your parents will participate in the Lord's assembly. They'll then be close to Amitabha Buddha and achieve the boundless self-nature of light and life. The sufferings of the Saha world are endless, even in time of peace. Sentient beings are jostling one another in an atmosphere of sorrow and affliction. However, because they've endured it for so long, they've grown accustomed to it and are no longer aware of it. In China recently, insurrection and strife have become daily events. The sufferings of the people are beyond description. Abroad, a great war has been raging for 3 years, with casualties already legion. The world conflict goes on with no end in sight. This tragic situation is caused by the karma of sentient beings and is the precursor of an extended period of disturbances to come. It is truly frightening to think of the sufferings of the future. I hope that both you will develop the Bodhi mind and seek rebirth in the Pure Land to achieve the fruits of Buddhahood swiftly before returning to the Saha world to rescue sentient beings. The sutras teach, Bodhisattvas fear causes, sentient beings fear effects and results. Bodhisattvas, being wary of evil